Hi, this is Todd with Toddzilla Talks. This is our first podcast, and although there are many topics out there I considered discussing, I felt that the transgender dysphoria would be the best to open up with. First of all, I'm not an attorney, nor do I practice. When I heard of this nonsense penetrating our schools and violating our children and parents' liberties and rights, I felt I should confront the Board of Education in Albuquerque. And with my daughter and a few close friends, we were able to inform the board of all the laws that they were violating and the parent teacher student relationships violations and the experiments on our children and the medical and health violations on our children as well. I started by doing just a little bit of research and listening to interviews with Jordan Peterson, Chloe Cole, and Abigail Schreier. Abigail's books and interviews gave me enough information to speak out and eventually file a criminal complaint against the Board of Education, Michelle Grisham, and the New Mexico legislature. Michelle Grisham is supposedly the governor of the state, but I have found has not filed the proper paperwork to actually be the governor. So that should be a concern. And for those New Mexicans who are following by her unconstitutional laws. I watched an interview with Elon Musk and how he was manipulated and coerced into sacrificing his son to the transgender movement. And so many other people have done that as well. Elon Musk and very sad but real atrocities perpetrated upon him and his son are criminal, not in my opinion, but in the actual spirit and word of the law. When the ridiculous idea of promoting the mental illness known as gender dysphoria took root with our culture, and especially promoted and supported with the public educational system, I found it at the least unsettling. I would like to share a few thoughts and some information I found. Some of the information I found has already been discussed, but others have not. So please take the information and use it to your advantage. And I hope at the very least you will file a criminal complaint against all the different government agencies who are responsible. It's not just our job to hold these officials accountable, but our obligation. The first thing you must understand is that the U.S. Constitution and your state constitution is a contract between the government we created and us, we the people. As the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and all other laws must abide by that document listed under Article 6, Section 2, this shows that the contract is a limited contract upon the government. It is our job to enforce this contract. Examples of the New Mexico Constitution in which the New Mexico government, is supposed to abide by include Article 2, Section 1, the supreme law of the land. The state of New Mexico is an inseparable part of the federal union, and the Constitution of the United States is the supreme law of the land. Article 2, Section 2 is the popular sovereignty clause. All political power is vested in and derived from the people. All government of right originates with the people, is founded upon their will, and is instituted solely for their good. Article 2, Section 3 is the right of self-government clause. The people of the state have the sole and exclusive right to govern themselves as a free, sovereign, and independent state. One of the things that I have found out as I have been filing things pro se and going up against different attorneys and different judges is that the Constitution has been ignored and laughed at and spit upon. And that's something that we need to make sure to enforce upon our government officials, as that is the contract we have with them. And that Constitution is to limit the government. You might be asking, where does the state constitution, where does it come into uh, the legalities, and how can you prove? And here's some simple background verifications and confirmations that there is a contract between us and the government. Under 16 AM jurisprudence, second edition, section 97 in Berry versus United States, 273 U.S. 128, then a constitution should receive a literal interpretation in favor of the citizen. Is especially true with respect to those provisions which were designed to safeguard the liberty and security of the citizen in regard to person and property. 16 AM jurisprudence, second edition, section 255. In all instances where the court exercises its powers to invalidate legislation on constitutional grounds, the conflict of the statute with the Constitution must be irreconcilable. Thus, a state is not to be declared unconstitutional unless so inconsistent with the Constitution that it cannot be enforced without a violation thereof. A clear incompatibility between law and the Constitution must exist before the judiciary is justified holding the law constitutional. The principles is, of course, in line with the rule that doubts as to constitutionality should be resolved in favor of the constitutionality and the beneficiary. We are the third party beneficiary. So if there's any discrepancy between us and the government, we get that benefit. The law favors us. Before I get into the different legal aspects of transgender dysphoria and how the U.S. Marxist government agencies have coerced American citizens in believing that men are women and vice versa, I would like to just touch on the detrimental physical aspects of this path. And the sources are listed, will be listed below. This is information that comes from American Psychiatric Association, from JAMA, papers from JAMA, and from a lot of what Abigail Schreier and Lisa Lippman had written in their papers and books. APS, or the Albuquerque Public School System here, is encouraging healthy students to follow a path of physical, psychological, and mental harm. JAMA Pediatrics found that as soon as a child identifies as LGBTQ, their suicide rate increases to 350%. Students that identify as gender dysphoric, their suicide rate is doubled to 600%. After 10 years of gender reassignment surgery, the suicide rates triples to 2,000%. According to American cardiologists, there is an increase in general mortality, pulmonary embolism, increase in risk of heart disease, heart attacks, increase in ischemic stroke, according to the American cardiologist. Mental health disorders such as depressive disorder, gender mood disorder, general anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, bipolar disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, phobia disorder, ADHD, adjustment disorder, schizophrenia, eating disorders, autism, PDD, dissociative disorder, personality disorder, cluster A, B, and C personality disorder, borderline personality disorder. Individuals have increased in chemical dependence, including tobacco, alcohol, opioid, cocaine, amphetamine, and cannabis abuse. As I said, the sources will be listed below. So when you look at all of these different types of disorders and the possibilities, what would happen when you go down this path, it's clearly stated, and you can clearly see that this is a form of child abuse. And that's one of the statutes that can be used if someone decides to go after or to sue the government agencies or your public schools. APS is endangering parents' offspring, placing them in harm's way, increasing chances of suicide, physical, mental, and psychological illnesses and harm, increasing chances of non-needed surgeries, coercing children to be experimented on through non-FDA approved hormone therapy without parents' informed consent. And you can easily look up whatever statute that is, but here in New Mexico, that's statute 32AR2, and it's abandonment or abuse of a child. And it's anywhere from the first to third degree felonies. One might argue that if parents are allowing their students or allowing their children to go to school, that they might be part of that abuse. And so it's something that they might consider. One aspect that was not addressed in other videos and interviews I observed was the issue of liability. I found it interesting that recently government agencies believe not only that they are sovereign, but they can dictate and have authority to coerce us to their will with no liability. One blatant example of this was the COVID crap. Government institutions believed that they could tell store owners to follow specific procedures such as mask wearing and shots without any liability. In this case, premises liability. So if we were to file a claim against a business insurance for contracting COVID on their property, you would not be able to collect damages because no insurance company would cover a contagious disease. For this simple fact that the risk is infinite and you cannot prove proximate cause. Moreover, the doctrine of the assumption of risk is in play. So, using this argument, as government has no liability, they have no say and no authority. So, businesses never should have shut down, and they could have used this argument to prevent overreach from government. In the case of transgender dysphoria and the government's Stalin-like claims over your child's welfare, there's no addressing of liability. Take the issue with Elon and his son. They coerced Elon without providing any information, including the risks and benefits of what could happen with hormone enhancers, blockers, or surgery, not including the psychological damage that would be done, nor the possible increase in suicide when making the transition upward to 2,000%. In this circumstance, because Elon was lied to or manipulated in some way, the contract itself that he signed is null and void. He could easily sue those responsible, as could all parents going through this situation. The bottom line is schools are claiming no liability, and the only person that has any say or authority for decision making concerning their child or their own well-being is because they are liable. This idea came from John Singleton, whom you can find at the Ace of Coins. The second violation that not many people have used is the 13th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. This is the right of freedom, indenturement, and slavery. The argument is that the child and family has been injured, oppressed, threatened, or intimidated, has intimidated the complainant's property and the free exercise of their rights, which are secured by the 13th Amendment. So this argument is the government's false claims on the parent's child. It is similar to the liability issue in that the government has no claim on your child. Your child is your responsibility. Although you are allowing your child to be taught at a school in which you are paying, the government believes that you have no authority, but they have the authority to indoctrinate, manipulate their lives upon the children. Of course, this is absurd, and the parent must address it, and in my opinion, go forth with the notice and claim if the behavior persists. In my opinion, to confirm, there must be cameras in the classrooms and with your child at all times. In my opinion, I would remove my child from these indoctrination camps. So no school personnel without medical training or licensing have the authority to allow students to self-diagnose or to diagnose, misdiagnose, treat, or mistreat individuals with any form of mental illness or disorder. If APS, or in my case, the Albuquerque Public School Systems, had school personnel had the capabilities to diagnose and treat a mental illness, they would require parental consent. So neither of these took place. So we had teachers, we had supervisors, we had ancillary staff that were not only diagnosing students with gender dysphoria, but they were also treating them. And students were self-diagnosing. None of these individuals have a psychology, a psychiatric background, or most of them aren't physicians that are able to do this. More importantly, not only are they diagnosing them, but when you allow someone or you enable someone to go along that path, that is a form of treatment. So they're not just diagnosing, misdiagnosing, they are actually treating those individuals. That's practicing medicine without a license, which is also a felony. So the APS policy of allowing students to self-diagnose and reaffirm the false identity desired by the individual as a mistreatment of any of the possible mental illness disorders, including dissociative disorder, delusion, schizophrenia, or gender dysphoria disorder. So unless you're actually being able to diagnose them, you don't know what form of dissociative disorder they may have. It could be schizophrenia. If you look up the definition of schizophrenia, it's very similar to delusion and also gender dysphoria. They're very similar. So you need to be a doctor to be able to diagnose those things. Board of Education, the superintendent, and faculty and staff, and those that participate in activities are in violation of this statute, which is 61620, which is a fourth-degree felony, practicing medicine without a license. If you go a little bit further with my background in special ed law, you will, because I was a special ed teacher, I'm not a lawyer, but I did have to understand some concepts of it. And when you look at those, you'll find that one of the main aspects, especially when I was teaching, is you had to do individualized you had to do an individualized assessment of a student, and then they would have to be tested in order to be able to give them services under the umbrella of ADA or special ed, or what we call it IDEA law. And if you look under section 300.300 in IDEA law, it specifically states that there must be parental consent. In fact, they're trying to pass laws and they're trying to pass mandates saying that parents have no say in these children that are being listed or being diagnosed with gender dysphoria. So in section 300.300 II, it states that a hearing officer may find denial of a free and appropriate public education only if procedural inadequacies impeded the child's right to a free, appropriate public education, significantly impeded the parent's opportunity to participate in the decision-making process regarding the provision of a free, appropriate public education, or cause a deprivation of educational benefit. So there must be parental consent before any type of special ed support is given in the school. And the reason I bring up special ed support is because a mental illness is a form of special needs. So if you have a mental illness, then you will fall under that umbrella, the IDEA umbrella, under ADA and ADAA and the IDEA law. So this is being blatantly dismissed, and this is an important aspect. So if a student is being documented having gender dysphoria, they must have a parent written notice. It must be given to the parent, and most parents are ignoring that. And a lot of them, I'm sure they don't know that because their kids aren't special needs. But if a child is being listed as special needs, that is part of the protocol, and that's also a felony. So there's many other different aspects of what can be applied to when you're talking about gender dysphoria. Everything that's being pushed on the students is absolute nonsense from every side of it. But I would encourage parents, and I would encourage those that are involved, that they need to take legal action. Lawyers and attorneys cost an arm and a leg, and they're just in it for billable hours. I would suggest doing things pro se. And you can look up information like with Dr. Graves, How to Win in Court Without a Lawyer. You can learn some basic fundamental skills there. You can go on Telegram and look at James Tracy, Affidavits 101. You look at the Law Society with Randy Kelton. You can look at Alphonse Fagiola. You can look at, there's so many different people that are fighting this battle that can help you. And, sitting on laurels is not going to help. In order for you to change this, there's a number of things that need to happen. First of all, you need to take legal action. You need to put them on notice, and then you need, whoever it is, that you may love your teacher, but your teacher is part of this. And if they're not, you might be able to get a friendly injunction for that to stop if she feels like she's caught or he's caught between a rock and a hard place. But it goes to the principals, it goes to the administrators, it goes to the ancillary staff, it goes to your governor, it goes to the mayor, it goes to the legislature. All of these people are involved in damaging your child and hurting your child and taking your rights away from your child. I only hit on one constitutional, I don't want to say a right, because the Constitution is to limit the government. You already have these God-given rights, and one of the God-given rights is for you to protect your child, and you have liability for your child. In this day and age, with all the human trafficking and the horrific things that we're doing to our children, we seem to think that we're in the fault. And we are not in the fault. They are in the fault. We need to protect our children. We need to fight for our children. We need to stand up to these government agencies and tell them what our rights are. It's in the contract. We need to set them straight, and we need to go forward with this. We just need more people standing up. And, when I've gone to these Board of Education meetings, I have not seen many men there. It's mainly women that are fighting this battle, and men need to stand up. Your kids are being brainwashed. Your kids are being manipulated. And if you don't do the work, if you don't look at the laws and you don't understand your rights, then you are also to blame. It's a challenge to all the men, the husbands and the fathers. This is a battle that is worth fighting. My challenge to you is, if you're going to allow your child to go to these schools, that are indoctrinating them, that are Stalinist, that are fascist, that are Marxist, then you need to go in and fight that battle. My children have all left. I fought the battle while they were there. I didn't fight hard enough. I think I should have fought harder. And now it's your job. And you should have more passion for it. And you should take more responsibility for it. So step up and make it happen. I hope you enjoyed this first podcast. This is our pilot. And hopefully we'll be adding a little bit more flavor to it. Hope to see you on the next one.